A lot of people are intimidated by the thought of styling food, as if you have to be some kind of a gifted artist who's making these beautiful dishes that you see in magazines or at fancy restaurants. But the fact of the matter is that styling is really easy. It's not so much about artwork as it is about just thinking through the process of putting the food on the plate in a way that's appealing and photogenic. And to do that, you don't need a lot of artistic ability, you just need to follow the 6 elements of styling. No matter what type of styling it is, whether it's something simple for your friends or whether it's in a fancy restaurant, they're all going to follow the 6 key principles. And if you follow those, you'll be just fine. At the end of the day, though, styling is really a personal art. It's something that can simply help you display your food, or if you're really artistically inclined and you want to use this as a medium, you can go much farther. But it's beyond the scope of this course to talk about how to use the squirt bottles to make fancy designs with your pesto sauce. What our focus is just getting you to be able to put your food on the plate in a way that really connects with people. And to do that, there's 6 elements of styling. Whether you're going to a fancy restaurant and they're styling the food in a really artistic way, or whether you're taking pictures for your friends and family on Instagram, they're both going to follow these 6 principles. And the first one is that you have to start by cooking pretty food. If you mess up the food and it's asymmetrical or it's burned, you can't really cover that up later on. So it's important to be mindful of how you're going to style your food before you start cooking. It's also important to use fresh ingredients and to take the photos soon after cooking before the food starts to die off. Many ingredients are very perishable, and if you make a rice or a pasta dish, you really have a few-minute window before it starts getting grainy, as we'll see later. Third is, as we've already discussed, you want to choose the best dish. The dish is really the canvas upon which your food and your artwork is built, so it's important to make sure the dish fits the scene, fits the food, and is set up correctly. Fourth, it's important to choose the right quantity. As a general rule, you don't want to have just a drop of food or an entire mountain, because people can connect better to a single serving that they would be likely to eat if they were actually eating the food in the photograph. And as you plate the food, it's important to showcase the ingredients. And this is the area where you can get more artistic or you can be more simple. And either way, you just want to highlight the ingredients and the important aspects of the scene. So we'll talk about how to do that. And to top it all off, garnishes are important, but they need to be used correctly. You don't want to overuse them, and you don't want to underuse them. So we'll talk about when to use garnishes and how they add to your pictures. But first, styling always starts with cooking, because you can't fix broken food. And here's that picture again that we've already discussed in this course about how I flipped the waffle incorrectly, and it doesn't matter how pretty the pumpkin is in this picture or what the lighting is like. The fact of the matter is there's a row of missing square holes in this waffle because I flipped it incorrectly. And if you make mistakes like this, you aren't really going to be able to cover them up. So it's important to start with the desired goal in mind, to know how you want to set your scene up as you cook it. That way, you'll be less likely to make mistakes and you'll be less likely to have to start over, and things will generally come out a lot better if you have a general idea of where you'd like to go before you start cooking. Now this is a picture that I'm a little bit embarrassed to share. It's a risotto. It was one of the first, probably within the first 5 recipes I posted on my blog. And what I did is I forgot to take pictures when I made it. So I took the leftovers the next day and I photographed the leftovers. And as you can see, the rice is just disgusting and grainy and it looks terrible. There's a million problems with this picture, but the biggest one is that I used dead ingredients. They weren't alive, they weren't fresh, and they look really, really bad. You'll also notice I used a very ugly plate for this dish that completely contrasts with the food, and it's just a disaster. But the point here is that you have to shoot food at peak freshness. For a lot of things, this means within the first 5 minutes of it finishing cooking, because a lot of types of food will die very quickly. Now certainly, if you take something like a leftover, it's going to look terrible, but in a general sense, even if you wait a half an hour, it's not going to look nearly as good as it does in the first 2 or 3 minutes. Later on in the program, we'll talk about how to set up a photo shoot to take advantage of this. So you have your lighting and your plating all set up, and you just have to bring the food in and take your pictures. That way you'll be less likely to run into this problem. And we'll go over a lesson on how to do that later. But for now, just recognize that a big part of styling is taking pictures of fresh ingredients that have not had a chance to deteriorate. And to do this, you really have to understand your ingredients and their lifetime. If you're taking pictures of cookies, you'll have several hours or even a day before they start to really deteriorate. But if you're taking a picture of rice or pasta or ice cream, you're going to have a few minutes at most. But contrast that risotto picture with another one that I took correctly. This one's in the right dish, it has the right garnishes, it has the right lighting, but most importantly, I took the pictures within 2 minutes of the risotto finishing cooking. And you can see it looks tremendously better compared to the leftover risotto that's all grainy and dried out. As we've already discussed in a previous lecture, choosing the right dish is really, really important because your dish is your canvas. It helps highlight the ingredients and it shows off the elements of the dish that are important to you. So to do this, you really want to keep it white and clean and simple, and you also want to choose the right size. A dish that's way too large or way too small is going to make the picture look a little awkward, so choosing the right dish is important. We won't go over a lot of these details here because we covered them in a previous lecture. Similarly, on this dish, you want to add the right amount of food. Generally, this is going to mean a single serving, because one serving enhances the realism and the connection. It looks like something that your audience is about to sit down and eat, and they can connect with that a lot better than just a few pieces or an entire mountain. There are obviously exceptions to this rule. If you want to get artistic and have a few pieces of pasta with some sauce around them, that's perfectly fine. Or if you want to take a picture of the entire dish inside of the pan, as I've showed a few examples already, that's fine too. So break this rule on purpose, but probably 8 out of 10 of my pictures are one serving on one plate that really highlight what the people will be eating if they try this dish. And as you start to add the food onto the plate, this is the part where a lot of people get concerned about how do I set it up, how do I make it look artistic, and keep it simple. Your goal is really just to tell a story by highlighting the food itself. In this case, it's a mushroom bolognese sauce over pasta. So there's pasta, and that's fine. We all understand pasta. That's not really very exciting. What I wanted to highlight was that I made the mushroom bolognese sauce. So everything else in the picture is fairly white, but the bright red sauce kind of stands out, and it's elevated, and it shows what's going on. I could have easily mixed in the sauce with the pasta, and that would look fine. The picture would come out the same. The difference is it wouldn't highlight the sauce as much. So you want to plate the food in a way that highlights your sauce and in a way that's aesthetically pleasing. If I had had the sauce off to the side, or if there had been some messy pieces on the edges, it wouldn't have the same effect. So take the time to create simple and clean dishes that really highlight the ingredients and make it clear what it is that you're actually trying to take a picture of. Finally, garnishes in food photographs are like they are on the actual dish, in the sense that if you covered your dish in mint leaves, it would really mask the true meaning of the dish for the person who's eating it. And in the same way, that would really mask the experience of the person looking at your picture. So you want to keep your garnishes simple. I don't like overly garnished pictures. They just look too messy and cluttered to me. At the end of the day, garnishes are going to do 3 things for you. And if you add them, make sure they're serving one of these purposes. The first is to add color. This dish over here, the chocolate chia pudding, would have been a very different picture had there been no green. It just would be almost grayscale. Lots of grays and browns and whites. But the mint leaf adds so much depth and color that's really helpful. Another thing that we've talked about several times in this course already is that garnishes can add information. Think back to the peanut butter cookies where I garnished them with peanuts so that you would understand that the cookies were peanut butter cookies. And finally, garnishes can add aesthetic value to the picture. They can simply make it look prettier. I think the chocolate shavings in this picture do that a little bit, and there's lots of ways to make your picture look more beautiful through the use of garnishes. Just please don't overdo it. Before we can go any further, I want to talk about how styling is really your own personal art. It's not my job to show you how to style or how to make your pictures look right versus wrong. There's really no wrong way of doing it unless the food looks ugly. So your only job is to make your food look appealing. And if you want to take this into a very artistic realm, like this cauliflower from Bon Appetit, you can do that. Or if you just want to keep it simple and earthy, and you want to make sure you're highlighting your ingredients in a way that's aesthetically appealing and photogenic, that's fine too. That's why I wanted to give you these principles and the elements of styling that give you a lot of flexibility. If you want to make it an art, fine. If you don't want to make it an art, that's fine too. Just follow the principles to create pretty food no matter what. At this point, we've discussed the 6 things you should use to style correctly, and we've also talked about how important it is to move quickly. But I've had many, many more pictures ruined by moving too quickly than moving too slowly. So before you take your pictures, after you've styled your food, it's important to take a minute, walk around the plate, absorb the details, check over your dish to make sure there's no crumbs. And I can't tell you how many pictures I've ruined because something was off to the side or it was imbalanced and I didn't notice it because I was too busy rushing. This is why I would highly recommend taking 1 or 2 minutes, your food won't die that quickly, to really absorb the scene and make sure that to your eye it looks absolutely perfect. Because if it doesn't look perfect to you, it's not going to look perfect to the camera. So please take a moment and pause before you take your pictures to make sure everything is exactly the way you want it. Otherwise, you're going to get to your computer, realize that that crumb in the corner can't be removed, and you're going to have to start all over. And I've been there, and I hope you can avoid going there. Your homework for this lesson is to copy. I want you to recreate a dish that you think is beautifully styled. So leaf through a magazine or check out a website and find something that you think is really pretty and that you can easily make yourself. And then I want you to actually make it the way they made it, style it the way they styled it, and then take a few pictures to try to recreate the scene that you're looking at. Because if you're intimidated by styling, it can really help you develop confidence and comfort in your abilities by doing what someone else has already done. It gets you in the right mindset as a stylist. I do this all the time. Often when I'm even doing photo shoots, I'll look at how other people have done their photo shoots of the similar types of food, and then I'll incorporate those elements into my photo shoot. And if you want some extra credit, do this 2 or 3 or 4 times, because I can think of no way that'll really hone your skills as a stylist as much as copying what other great stylists have done before you.